Welcome everyone to another chapter of Seeing Opportunity in Devastation. My co host, Ed Hatton, is our master storyteller, and we can't wait to be inspired by the various anecdotes, references, examples of how we can all survive in times of devastation. And last week we actually said is that we were talking specifically about a seller's market moving from buyer's market into seller's market, and last week we spoke about specifically now what happens if you only got a buyer's market. So what we are saying, as of today onwards, we are saying, well, how do you prosper in all types of markets and circumstances? So welcome, Ed, over to you.
Thanks, Jacques. Hi, everyone. We had an announcement, a very big announcement during this week, which said that the state of disaster, which has been with us for 2 years, is no more. And for over 700 days, we've been living under a set of regulations of various severities, from don't move out of your own house to much more relaxed circumstances. But now we don't have a state of disaster anymore. We don't even have to wear a mask unless we're indoors in a public spot. So there are a whole lot of people who are going to be really recognizing people they've met in the last 2 years, but they haven't ever seen their faces. And I think of the children who's maybe started play school at age 5 or something like that, and wearing a mask to them is just what you do. It's like putting on pants. You put on a mask.
Pretty standard now, yes,
Yeah,
commonplace.
yeah. Now, now I wonder how they feel. They're going to have to learn. A whole lot of people are going to have to learn the whole ambit of facial expression, which had very limited use of in the past couple of years because all of the mask wearing in public. So lots of change because of that announcement. Although most of those restrictions were, in practical terms, not bothering us at the time. But now it really is, we have to say, aside from some restrictions on gatherings, we really are at a point where we have to say, well, there's nothing that's stopping us now. So, title of this particular one is "What Happens if the turtle now thinks it's safe to stick its head out of its shell and venture forth? What happens if it doesn't?" Let's just analyze the situation. We've been sitting in a defensive mindset for the past 2 years. In fact, for many people, we've been sitting in a survival mindset where we have hopefully tried to keep alive in across these 2 years, keep from losing too much, keep from losing our businesses, and sadly, a lot of people didn't succeed in doing that. Keep from losing our homes, and sadly, a lot of people didn't do that either. And our vehicles and everything else. And we've been simply closing down the doors and saying we will do everything to survive. So we've cut back on costs to the bone. We've not ventured out. We've moved to online rather than face to face because it's more convenient and safer. And in some cases, it was mandatory. That's what we had to do. Um, and now we're in a mode where those rules don't apply anymore. Those requirements don't apply anymore. Is this the time to switch over to being adventurous? And if it is, how do you do that when you have this ingrained caution of 2 years of fear actually for survival, both from a personal perspective, from a health perspective, and also from a financial perspective. And we have to realize we've had a tough time. We've had the dual whammy of fearing that we might contract a disease, which in not very many, but an uncomfortable number of cases ended up hospitalized or in ICU or even in death. And certainly, while it was going on, it wasn't fun for most people, although some people had very light versions of it. And we also had to realize we've come to realize that the health risks of the long COVID are quite severe, that the consequences of even a mild attack of COVID can be very severe and might be with us for an unknown time for the future. So we've had fear for our safety and the safety of our loved ones. And most people will know at least someone who was severely affected and probably know within their circle of at least one death. But then from a financial side, we know that the last 2 years have been devastating. The unemployment rate has gone rocketing up. A lot of businesses have been unable to function at all or profitably. And what was there um, has shrunk in many instances. People have had to sell assets just to keep alive. Uh, many families had to move back to parents or move in together to save costs while giving up other more spacious accommodation. So we've had the twin worries of surviving financially and surviving from a health perspective. And then probably also the third worry about surviving technology, about learning all of these new things, about how to live in the virtual world, how it is that you live when you don't visit shops, they visit you, where you don't visit takeaways, they visit you, where you don't speak to audiences face to face, they come to you as they do right here on Clubhouse, where we had to master kinds of things that we've never been exposed to before. Managing health risks, managing um, technology for keeping our vehicles running, managing all sorts of new ideas and concepts which we've never been exposed to before. So that was the third issue. And perhaps the fourth issue is managing information. Because, wow, have we been drowned in information in the last 2 years? Good, bad, malicious, frankly, disastrously bad, um, and every shade in between. We've had much deliberate misinformation happening. We've had all shades of opinion being forced on us. And then in the middle of it all, we had a lot of civic unrest in July last year. We had huge political upheavals. We've had our rand being beaten down by other currencies. And we now find huge inflationary escalations in things like petrol and electricity and insurances and security and all these other issues. So we've really had a tough time. And in that mode, you have to be on the defense. And now I'm saying, should you stick your head out? Aren't you going to be fearful that it's going to be chopped off? Because some of those risks still lurk around. Misinformation certainly lurks around. Political uncertainty lurks around. Financial distress still lurks around. And there's still the risk of COVID, although it's very much lower than it has been in the past. and probably less severe if you do contract it. Is this the time to go and take a bold step and go into debt to lease that shop, which is empty at the moment, that you've had your eye on for just the purpose that you believe will make you a lot of money? It's a big, big trick to change the mindset from total defensiveness to being a risk taker, to taking unnecessary risks, as some people might term them, to taking risks which we wouldn't have done in the last 2 years because we had so many risks that we had to manage anyway, where our life was one long risk. Is this the time to go adventurously hiring staff, to take on new products, to put in place extensive R&D to develop new ideas and new concepts? Is this the time to buy the latest technology to re-equip your factories? Is this the time to chuck away the old vehicles and get some new ones? It's a big question, isn't it, Jacques?
Absolutely, but so pertinent. It's
Yeah,
extremely relevant right now, Ed.
yeah. And, you know, it doesn't have to apply to giant industrial corporations. It applies to everyone. If you're, I don't know, a business coach or a photographer, is this the time to invest in new IT or photographic equipment? Is this the time to go on a fairly intensive marketing spree? Is there the market? Will people buy, or are they still too afraid? How do you know? Unless you go out there and try. But if you do go out there and try, you might be exposing yourself to a lot of costs with no return. And probably our reserves have been run down to either zero or close to zero. So going out and doing something adventurous now is serious adventure. You may end up going into debt because of it. Well, those are the sort of ifs and ands about it. Should you or shouldn't you? Well, you know me, I'm an optimist. Um, I've always said that in the worst of times, the best opportunities occur, and so it has proved that during the COVID pandemic, in the very, very worst of times, many businesses have grown strongly right through these horrific times. Businesses which started in 2019 and were just sort of opening their doors when they got them slammed closed for 2 years, and yet they've survived. And in many cases have grown. Heard a story a little while ago of two uh, motor technicians, brothers who set up their own business in 2019, went into business together, had to move their factory because it was too small and too expensive to a larger factory, got some very, very nice contracts, and probably 3 years later, each of them would probably be worth around about net worth of their business worth would be around about R1 million. Now that's a hell of a growth in 2.5 very, very bad years. And a lot of other businesses have done exactly the same. They have thrived during this period, and not necessarily from the COVID pandemic, just because they were the right business at the right time in this environment. The delivery services are but one example of that, which are now a huge business in their own right. Downloadable books like ebooks and audiobooks are another one. And we could go on with many, many such examples. But now, for the average Joe, you've got to make a decision. Do you go forward or do you hold back? The downside, if you hold back and you reduce risk for yourself, is of course that you get an aggressor coming out there, and an aggressive person intent on developing market share likes nothing more than to find a really defensive competitor that they can attack viciously, that they can attack with all sorts of strategies to take as many of their customers, pinch their best staff, uh, take their suppliers away from them, deny them materials, and end up perhaps acquiring them for a song. So if you don't do anything about it, you might find yourself the mercy of a predator. And right now, I'm very, very sure there's an awful lot of really smart predators out there looking for the bargains. Those will
For
be the
sure.
ones who are snapping up the empty factories for rock bottom prices, who are buying up all the unused machinery for rock bottom prices, who are hiring the best staff, even if they have to lure them away from competitors, and end up with a very strong position, low cost base, because they've got low cost uh, premises and equipment, highly skilled staff, and perhaps a juicy selection of customers. That's a scary competitor to have. Low cost, very aggressive, very prepared to take risk. They can do a lot of things that you can't do if you're in sitting behind the castle gates mode. So I think entrepreneurs need to think about this. Think carefully. Is this the time to go out and be assertive? Is it time to just go out and put toe in the water? Does that work? Is it a good idea to just test the water a little bit? I suppose it can be. Depends on the environment. But I've always, I've been in sales and marketing most of my life. And I've always had the sense that buyers could sense a tentative vendor, someone who was not fully committed to their offer, that weren't prepared to die for the sale. And if they sense that, they may be a lot more hesitant to do business. I have no evidence behind this. That's just a gut feel from my many, many years of experience. But if it is true, then you don't want to be too tentative. If you are going to test the water, then pick a small sector, one of your products, one of your product ranges, to one of your target markets, and go and do an aggressive campaign there. But at least you're limiting the damage if it doesn't work. If it does work, then all you do is you roll it out to all the other sectors and all the other product ranges, and start looking ahead. My other recommendation would be to look at what's happening around you. There have been a lot of developments in 2 years. There have been a lot of technological developments, some of them coming from COVID, some of them coming because people were sitting around with not very much to do. And so they developed new ideas, new concepts, new thoughts. And the internet is full of such examples. The blogs and podcasts and the other sources of information on the internet are too numerous even to take in more than a fraction of them. But a lot of them represent great new ideas, new technologies, new researched methods of doing things, new thinking, new ways. And people are looking at that. People are looking for ideas in many of these. So again, it would be my recommendation that you pick your series of podcasts or blogs, if you like blogs, or sources of information, or YouTube channels, where you can source the latest and most interesting information about your field, about developments that have been done in your field, about research that has happened in your field. Because let's make no mistake, the whole research world has been turned around. We've developed very effective vaccines in a much shorter time than was ever thought possible before. And as has been shown worldwide, they are pretty safe. The side effects are strictly limited. And nobody would have thought we could have done that before. Now, some of those research spin offs must have some benefits. I know that we had a lot of engineering work going into making things like face masks, manufacturing different types of appliances like ventilators, um, which we had to fast track manufacturing processes for uh, in a very, very short space of time, shorter than we've ever had the requirements for that kind of thing. And that sort of research is going to serve us well in the future. What research affects your kind of business? How many people in the coaching environment have used these last 2 years to upgrade their thinking, their education, their studies of clients, their ways of doing business to whole new levels? And it's tough to keep up, but we should be doing that, shouldn't we?
So Ed, the thought, and as usual, the challenge to me is, as I'm listening to you, is moving from a mindset that has, out of sheer necessity, been one of a defensive one, to a growth mindset. It's thinking beyond the limitations. We have become so accustomed to the situation that was, and as you so correctly positioned at the very outset, is that we had a law in place, we had rules and regulations in place, and like anything else, we become conditioned to those things. Now those, or most of those rules and regulations are removed, but we can still act as if they are still there. So success has to start somewhere, by having a growth mindset, thinking beyond, believing that you now can. And I like how the recommendation that if your risk appetite has now so shrunk as an entrepreneur, because as an entrepreneur we know if you don't risk there will be no return, but if you can still harness that risk appetite, even if it's shrunk to such an low level, by testing. That's what you said. By doing it in a sort of, maybe there's a bit of a cautious way, but you're still stepping out of what has been status quo for the last 2 years. So step out, even cautiously, a little step. Some people will take a leap, others will just step, others will just fly out of the situation. But the point is, step out of it, step beyond the last 2 years and its conditioning.
Absolutely, Jacques. And also, I must point out that you said correctly, there were rules. We've been living for the past 2 years with people telling us what to do and what not to do. We've been listening to all kinds of helpful advice and some not so helpful, um,
Yes.
and all kinds of restrictions on what we may or may not do. And we've, to a large degree, got into the sheep mold mode, you know, where we follow instructions because we had to. If you didn't follow instructions, you may be infected with a dread disease, or you may be arrested, or you may be fined. Um, and nobody wanted any of those. So we lived as a fairly disciplined society within those rules. And we continually were bombarded on a daily basis with new suggestions, ideas. You should do this, you should not do this. Some of them useful, some of them absolutely useless. Some of them sounded good and subsequently turned out to be completely the wrong idea. But that's what we were told. We were told by official sources. We were told by social media. We were told by the general media that we were told by experts by the million about this is what you should be doing and shouldn't be doing. And I think we become conditioned to saying, well, I can't actually do anything until someone tells me that I can.
Hmm.
Now,
Hmm.
it's quite difficult to move away from that mindset where
Yes.
someone orders you around all day long and that's what you do. Yeah, it's a bit like being in the army. Um, and then suddenly moving out into some kind of exploratory patrol where you have to make your own decisions. And you're not used to doing that because for the last 2 years, someone's been telling you what to do all the time. What time to go to bed, what time to wake up, what to eat, what not to eat, what to wear. And suddenly you're in a different dimension. You have to
Hmm.
set your mind consciously to saying, I make up the rules now. I
Yeah.
don't have to follow the rules, or not at least as many of the rules as we have had to follow over the last couple of years. Now, what I'm suggesting is that you at least set some rules in place for yourself and say, I will not just sit back and wait for people to tell me what to do. I will start making the rules myself. And that might be just an experiment with a small part of your customer base, or it might be simply going around to every one of your customers and saying, what can we do for you now that I can actually talk to you? And now that you're back in your business premises and you're trying to rebuild your lives, how can I help you to rebuild? Because if you can crack that as a secret, then you really are going to be doing well. But if you sit back and let caution, let wait, let's hold on and see how things go, you may well have missed the boat by the time the next couple of months rolls around. We don't know what the future is going to be. Who knows? We might have another lockdown at some stage. I believe China has a very severe lockdown in some parts right now. This could happen to us again. We don't want to waste the time and the opportunity we have now. And as always, your most important asset is your customers. So first, look at them. See what you can do better for them. Ask them. Don't talk to them. But sitting back and hoping it's going to get better, um, it's not really my style. I hope it's not the style of a lot of our listeners.
Oh, Ed, once again, lots to chew on there. And maybe just to close off, is to say, look, as an entrepreneur, as you listen to this podcast, remember, it is your choice. You can adopt a wait and see attitude, but just know there's an opportunity cost involved. What is the opportunity cost? Missed opportunity, missed revenue growth, missed profit growth, missed market growth. And so take the step, venture out, do something, even as it suggests, micro steps. So until next week, let's see how you do this, how you accomplish this. And we would love that when you listen to us, is to drop us perhaps a note and tell us, share some of your stories of success. Tell us whether you've had an aha moment or not, and we will certainly appreciate the feedback. So,
And also, or even come and join us. Give us your feedback directly. We'd love to.
absolutely join us on Clubhouse. So until next week then.